In modern charismatic and New Apostolic Reformation circles, Leviathan has become a spiritual buzzword, frequently invoked in deliverance sessions, spiritual warfare books, and prophetic conferences. Teachers like John Eckhart, Jennifer LeClaire, Bob Larson, and others have framed Leviathan as a high-ranking demonic entity. It is often described as a twisting spirit that causes pride, miscommunication, division in churches, emotional coldness, and rebellion in leadership. Eckhart, in particular, teaches that Leviathan is responsible for hardening people's hearts, creating strife between Christians, and working through spiritual pride to keep individuals from receiving truth or correction. Others claim it's a marine spirit, part of a larger hierarchy of water-based demonic forces. This newly invented concept of Leviathan is not rooted in biblical exegesis, but in spiritual allegorization and syncretism with other belief systems, such as African Spiritism and medieval demonology. These ministries often offer warfare prayers or deliverance techniques for binding or casting out Leviathan, suggesting believers can defeat this entity through spiritual authority, fasting, or prophetic acts. In their narrative, Leviathan is not just an ancient symbol, but a literal, present-day spiritual threat that must be confronted by believers. This reimagining of Leviathan sets the stage for a radical disconnect between biblical theology and modern spiritual warfare practices. Contrary to modern spiritual warfare teachings, the Bible never presents Leviathan as a demonic spirit to be fought or cast out by believers. Instead, Leviathan is consistently described as a powerful, untamable creature of the sea, used symbolically to represent chaos, danger, and the vast, uncontrollable forces of nature. In Job 41, Leviathan is described in detail as a terrifying sea creature with scales like armor, eyes that glow, and a mouth that breathes fire. God's point to Job is clear. No human can subdue Leviathan, but God can and does. It is a rhetorical climax in God's argument, emphasizing his unmatched power over creation. The question posed to Job is, if you can't even control Leviathan, how dare you question me? Leviathan also appears in Psalm 74, where God is praised for crushing the heads of sea monsters and giving Leviathan as food to the wilderness. In Psalm 104:26, Leviathan is said to frolic in the sea, playing before God, a striking contrast to the terror assigned to it by deliverance ministers. Isaiah 27 portrays Leviathan as the twisting serpent God will slay, echoing the symbolic defeat of cosmic chaos. At no point is Leviathan treated as a demon to be cast out. It is a poetic embodiment of disorder, subject only to God's sovereign authority. To fully grasp what the Bible is doing with the figure of Leviathan, we must place it within the context of the ancient Near Eastern worldview. Cultures surrounding Israel, such as the Canaanites, Babylonians, and Egyptians, shared a common mythological theme, the battle between a creator deity and a primordial chaos monster. In Ugaritic texts, for instance, the storm god Baal defeats the seven-headed sea serpent Lotan, the direct linguistic ancestor of the Hebrew Leviathan. This creature represented the chaotic, untamable forces of the sea, which threatened cosmic order. Likewise, in Babylonian myth, the god Marduk slays Tiamat, the dragon of the saltwater deep, to form the heavens and the earth. These myths were not seen as childish fantasies, but as theological statements about divine power, order, and kingship. Instead of borrowing these mythologies, the biblical authors subverted them. In the Hebrew scriptures, Yahweh does not struggle with Leviathan. He creates it, Psalm 104:26, plays with it, and crushes it at will, Psalm 74:14. The point is clear. While the nations feared chaos and elevated their gods through battle myths, Israel's God reigned so completely that even chaos itself dances under his command. Leviathan isn't a threat to Yahweh, it's a prop in his cosmic theater. The Bible's use of Leviathan is not just poetic flair as seen in other ancient mythologies. It's a theological statement about God's unrivaled dominion over every force of disorder and evil. In contrast to ancient myths where gods battle monsters in desperate struggles, Yahweh's relationship to Leviathan is one of unchallenged control. Scripture does not portray God as locked in combat, but as the creator and master of even the most fearsome symbols of chaos. In Isaiah 27:1, Yahweh is prophesied to slay Leviathan, the twisting serpent, defeating the dragon of the sea, not as a hard-won victory, but as a sovereign act of judgment. Similarly, Psalm 89 praises God for crushing Rahab, another chaos creature in the form of either a sea creature or dragon, in poetic national pride. The term "like one slain" was used to show his power over the cosmic and political forces that threaten his people. The Bible transforms a symbol of terror into an emblem of divine mastery. Yahweh doesn't fear Leviathan, he commands it. This is not a battle to be fought by prophets or intercessors. It's a victory already secured by the Most High. Modern deliverance teachings that treat Leviathan as a literal demon to be cast out reflect a fundamental misunderstanding of both Scripture and ancient context. Leaders like John Eckhart and Jennifer LeClaire frequently identify Leviathan as a spirit of pride, miscommunication, or division, something to be bound, rebuked, or exorcised. They create elaborate spiritual warfare strategies aimed at combating this demonic force, often borrowing language from psychology, mysticism, and charismatic tradition more than from Scripture itself. But the failure of this doctrine is not just theological, it's structural. It rewrites God's message in Job 41, where Yahweh directly says that Leviathan is untamable by humans and that any hope of subduing him is false, Job 41:9. These teachings also revive ancient pagan cosmologies under a Christian veneer, unknowingly echoing Babylonian fears of chaos rather than embracing the biblical confidence in God's sovereignty. Instead of seeing Leviathan as a symbol of divine supremacy, modern prophets turn it into a bogeyman used to elevate their own authority through deliverance rituals. This reimagining obscures the text's purpose and encourages believers to fight battles that God has already declared won. In doing so, the Leviathan doctrine becomes not just bad theology, it becomes a distraction from the biblical vision of Yahweh's all-encompassing rule. When the Bible speaks of spiritual warfare, it does not direct believers to cast out mythical beasts or engage in cosmic combat with ancient sea monsters. Instead, true spiritual warfare in Scripture is about resisting temptation, standing firm in faith, and remaining loyal to God in the face of evil. In the New Testament, there is no mention of Leviathan, not in Jesus' teachings, not in Paul's letters, and not in Revelation as an active adversary to be fought by believers. The apostles never taught that Leviathan needed to be bound, broken, or exorcised. Instead, believers are called in Ephesians 6 to put on the armor of God, and in James 4 to resist the devil and walk in truth, righteousness, and faith. Jesus himself demonstrates what true spiritual authority looks like. He walks on the sea, Job 9:8, calms the storm, casts demons into the abyss, and ultimately defeats the power of sin and death. These acts symbolically reverse the chaos motifs that Leviathan represented. In Revelation 12, the final dragon imagery evokes Leviathan, but it is not a creature to be fought by men. It is cast down by heaven's armies and ultimately destroyed by Christ. The biblical model is not about imitating mythical battles, it's about trusting in the God who has already overcome them. In the New Testament, Jesus does not battle Leviathan by name, but his actions consistently echo the ancient biblical theme of God's authority over cosmic chaos. Every moment in the Gospels where Jesus confronts the sea, demons, or nature itself is a deliberate reassertion of Yahweh's sovereignty, fulfilling the imagery that began with Leviathan. When Jesus walks on the sea, Matthew 14:25, he mirrors Job 9:8, where God treads on the waves of the sea. When he calms the storm with a word, Mark 4:39, the disciples are stunned, asking, "Who is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him?" A question with profound theological weight. Jesus doesn't engage in chaotic combat. He effortlessly dominates forces that symbolize danger and unpredictability in the ancient world. One truth should stand unshaken. Leviathan is not your enemy, it is God's trophy. In Job 41, God takes nearly an entire chapter to describe the terrifying majesty of Leviathan, only to emphasize one thing: no human can master it. Its armor is impenetrable, its roar fearsome, its movements untamable, yet God delights in it. Psalm 104:26 says, "There the ships go to and fro, and Leviathan, which you formed to frolic there. This is not a creature of hell, it is a creature of heaven's imagination. A chaos beast transformed into a plaything, because that's how complete God's authority truly is. The modern prophetic movement's obsession with slaying Leviathan says more about its addiction to performance and fear than it does about biblical truth. When prophets posture themselves as dragon slayers and demon hunters, they rewrite God's script and place themselves at the center of a drama that only He is qualified to direct. Scripture never authorizes us to bind Leviathan, because Leviathan was never a threat to us. It was a metaphor to reveal the terrifying glory of God's power. The real call is to humility, reverence, and worship, not combat. You don't fight God's trophies, you stand in awe of them.